Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of George TBR. My name is Jim Modugno. I'm the guest host. My guest tonight is the actual normal host, Mr. George Binns.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's different side of the table tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. So tonight, I think we're going to talk about is electrification
Yeah.
in regard to home.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it is?
Well, it started really back after World War II. And after the atomic bomb, everybody got really hot about nuclear power. And I always remember the phrase that it's going to be so cheap we won't even have to put a meter on the house. And as a result, a lot of houses got built after World War II with electrified heating systems, essentially heating element in the baseboard. And man, did those meters spin. And even though the houses were well insulated, a lot of people very quickly got to the point of it's too much and we're going to convert back to some other fuel. If you had gas on the street, you'd go to gas or go to fuel oil. So it got to be a good idea that wasn't ready for its time. And right now, what started this particular discussion was we had a discussion with Kevin O'Reilly about a month or so ago, talking about what's going on in the Green New Deal. And turns out the governor of the state of Massachusetts has got a plan to electrify 1 million houses at the rate of 100,000 houses a year. And last year, all of 461 houses got electrified. So he's a little behind on his schedule. And after doing a little bit of homework on it, I can understand why. And the other thing that was intriguing about the discussion with Kevin was we're supposed to get a $10,000 rebate from the state, or an incentive from the state to make the conversion. So with that kind of incentive, I said, why not? I'll give it a shot. And I looked at, first of all, just doing a simple conversion, which means staying with my existing hot water system, forced hot water system, and converting the boiler from running on gas to running on electricity. And the estimates range from $7,000 to $14,000. Wasn't bad. So I decided, okay, what's it going to do to my heating bill? And start to get into some of the arithmetic, and I pulled up a couple of the last month's heating bills and the electric bill, and figured out that I can buy a therm of gas, which is 100,000 BTUs, for $1.83. And I went through my electric bill, and I'm paying 30 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. Fine. And you start to go through the conversion of, okay, if I look at how many BTUs I've been using over, say, a year, I think last year I went through 4,000 BTUs, and all of a sudden you start calculating that out at 30 cents a kilowatt hour, and it takes 29 kilowatts to equal one therm. All of a sudden I'm looking at a bill for about $22,000 a year for heating, which is very quickly a non-starter. And I just gave up on that. I never got any farther on it. The next exercise was, okay, how about a heat pump? And that's the thing they're really pushing to make this conversion.
What exactly is a heat pump?
Basically, it's your refrigerator with the door wide open, so that when you are running your refrigerator, you're literally taking the heat out of the box inside and running it through a compressor, and you pump it outside. On the back of your refrigerator is a heat exchanger. So
set of coils?
Set of coils in a container. And basically, you're heating up the room with the heat you take out of the refrigerator.
Okay.
So that's a heat pump. It's literally pumping the heat from one box to another. And that's essentially what they do on a house, is that you have this humongous contraption sitting outside, and it takes heat from the environment and either pumps it into your house or takes heat from your house and pumps it outside as air conditioning. So it runs both ways. That's the main difference between a heat pump and your refrigerator. It can run forwards and backwards.
Okay.
And so I had this gentleman come by and give me an estimate on converting the house. Well, in order to do my house, it would take 2 units, one for the second floor in the attic. I got a bedroom up in the attic. Okay. And another unit for doing the first floor. And I live on Prospect Hill, which is a rock pile. So the idea of having a ground source as my source of heat.
Like a thermal? Is it?
Yeah, thermal. Out of the question. Drilling down through that be extremely prohibitive, and there's not really enough area around to have a coil in the ground to pick up ground heat. So although a ground source heat pump is much more efficient, much more effective, it's prohibitive financially to do it, if not impossible.
What you're describing right now, is that what we put into the police station?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Because
that's
I remember them digging up the whole thing, going down, laying pipes down, drilling down, and running, looked like hoses down there.
Yeah, they got 38 holes in the ground, drilling down to find a source of relatively cool water or cool dirt. Around here, northeast United States, ground temperatures around 47 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
So when you're pumping heat from 47 degrees up to room temperature, like 72, 76, something in that order, it's not too bad a problem. You don't have to do too much work to pump that heat up. When you start talking about these air source heat exchangers or air-to-air heat exchangers, now you're stuck with whatever the local air temperature is, and you have to work over a range of, well, say you turn the heat on when it gets to be like 60, 65 outside, warm the house up to 72, or all the way down to freezing and below. So you're working through a much wider range of temperatures, and as a result, depending upon what the outside air temperature is, you have to put more or less work into pumping it up to room temperature. And that gets to be one of the other problems that came out of this ingredient, that the efficiency of these units starts to fall off. And depending upon who makes it, you get different answers on how fast the effectiveness falls off. And Mitsubishi was the one particular brand that this gentleman was pushing. It starts to fall off around 47 degrees, and then it keeps going. And once you get to about minus 13, it's about out of gas. I hate to use that phrase, but anyway.
I get your point.
Yeah. So the other thing that came out of it is you have to keep your existing system, because
As a backup?
as a backup, either for a very cold day kind of situation,
Okay.
or when the electric power goes out. We have a tendency around here to have very nasty winter storms that take down trees on power lines, and next thing you know, you're out of electricity for a couple of days. And
So is this type of electrification of a home, it would obviously differ from one region of the country to another? I mean, Florida is going to be usually pretty hot most of the year.
well, Florida is basically an air conditioning system that, oh, by the way, you can get heat when it's a little chilly,
Okay.
kind of thing.
So that's
Yeah, so, and this is the other thing, too, that the way that this particular agent was trying to peddle his system, he was peddling mainly as complete house air conditioning. But, oh, by the way, you get some heat benefit out of it. But you still got to have your gas system available for when it gets really difficult, and, as you said, for a backup.
so in essence, what you're doing is you're really engaging in two complete systems,
Yeah,
which becomes dual source,
yeah,
right? But multiple costs.
yeah. And the other part of this game comes down to is that when you start to look at the economics of even a heat pump, you're starting off with paying like $1.83 for 100,000 BTUs,
Yeah.
and to get the equivalent amount of heat from electricity, you're talking 30 cents times 29, because 29 is the magic conversion factor to go from therms to kilowatt hours. So you're talking something on the order of almost $9. So it's $1.83 versus $9. So you can see instantly that if you're depending upon a cow rod into your boiler to make warm water, or a baseboard heating unit like a big toaster element, you got a wire in there that's going hot, you're already in the hole financially by a factor of maybe 4.5, 4.75, and you can do a little bit of calculation. Say, well, okay, an electric wire in the wall, like a toaster, it's 100% efficient. All the electricity you put into it turns into heat. Nothing's wasted. With a gas boiler, you have some inefficiency because some of the hot gas is going up the flue. And the boiler I've got is rated at 84%. So even if I take a 16% discount,
So 84 would be your efficiency.
my efficiency of the boiler, 84% of the heat and the gas actually goes into the house. The rest of it goes up the chimney. So that'll take it down to about $8.60 worth of cost to buy the electricity to match what the boiler is doing. So it's still a 3.5 to 1 multiplication factor.
So what was in looking at the system you were looking at? What was the overall cost going to be approximately? If you don't mind sharing.
No, that's fine. The unit for the second floor was a 42,000 BTU unit, and it's got 5 ports on it, so it can do the 4 bedrooms in the second floor and the 1 bedroom in the attic,
Okay.
3rd floor. And that was installed at just under $30,000.
Wow.
And the other part of the problem with that is on the second floor there are 2 bathrooms that would have to have their own units, and there's another small room on the second floor that would need its own unit. So I need another unit to handle those 3 rooms, just take care of the second and third floor. The first floor was going to be $24,000, and that was mostly to run ductwork in the basement and have floor registers around the perimeter,
Right.
like a typical forced hire system.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would end up with radiators, or first floor I got baseboard heat.
Yep.
I got radiators on the second and third floor for essentially forced hot water heat. And then for the heat pump system, would end up with floor registers and ductwork, typical forced hot air system, on the first floor. Second floor would have what they call mini splits, which is a unit about this big, so big, and it sits in the ceiling between the rafters.
Oh, wow.
So it is dumping either hot or cold air, depending what season you're in, directly into the room. But the problem with that is it's only in that room.
Right.
So that's why I need a third unit for the small rooms, the 2 bathrooms and the other small room.
So, based on what you've been saying, the expenses in which you occurred, right? So you're up around 30,000 plus, right? And then you might get a little bit of a rebate, but by the same token, how does the average person, right, middle class and low income families, how would they ever afford to do something like that? Is it out of their price range?
I think so. I wouldn't spring for that kind of money,
Right.
for that kind of a system. I'm looking at 30,000 plus another 20 some odd. I'm up to 50,000 and change, and I still got a third unit to pay for, which is maybe another 10 or 15,000. I'm looking at about $65,000 worth of investment to electrify my house.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Most people can't afford that.
and
Would also these type of programs in which they want everybody to kind of use these heat pump type of approaches, would it be best if it was just a brand new build? Would that be much more efficient in terms of the cost?
it would be more efficient if you could build it in the right area where you could go to a ground source
So you can
system.
go into the ground.
So you've
Yep.
got less of a workload on the system.
Yep.
And you're also saying, okay, I'm willing to spring for an air-conditioned house, which in this area, it's a mitts. Maybe you need an air conditioner. Maybe you need one of the 2 units in the window, so you can sleep at night or something like that. But it's not as like you're living in Florida where, it's the temperatures are way up and you have to accommodate that kind of a weather all year round. People don't like it, so it's
Yeah.
a different environment.
When I was looking into the readings about it and so forth, and they were basically saying it all depended on which part of the region, which part of the city you were on, or what your soil was, and everything else. They were sort of leaning towards the fact that this is just a first step in what they call electrification of your home. Ideally, what they talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they would like you to get rid of, if you have a gas stove, you need to get rid of that. If you have a gas dryer, you need to remove that. And so everything's got to really run off electricity.
Yeah, that's the game plan. Yeah,
That's the game plan.
yeah, and it just ups your investment costs up front. And the other hooker on this thing is it's not the neatest of systems to install because you're talking about a pipe maybe 2 inches in diameter that you got to run from the unit outside to these mini splits.
So I see things running up the side of people's
Yeah,
homes
so it's-
about this wide.
Yeah. So what they end up doing is running multiple tubes up the side of the house, and they build a little cage over them to make them look less onerous.
Yep.
But I've seen some houses where they don't bother, just run the tube up the side of the house. And again, it's a situation where you've got a house that's already built. It's not like string and wire. You can go in and put the wires in the wall between the joists. That's relatively easy to do in most houses. A tube this big, that's very difficult.
Yeah, you got to be able to get it between the joists and everything else. So there's a lot of
Yeah,
drilling.
but the point you were making earlier, if you're starting from scratch with a brand new build,
probably-
you can bury them in the wall.
Yeah.
That ain't too bad. But the other part of this game is that when you start to look at the incentives, the $10,000 that Kevin was talking about only applies if you don't have gas in your house. If you've already got gas in your house, it's down to $4,000 incentive, which is nothing in comparison.
Yeah, I also read that a lot of the rebates are also conditional upon, the amount is conditional upon your actual income. family income.
Could be, I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I was reading some of those. One of the articles I was reading was talking about California is the leader of this type of activity, which is, who's surprised, right?
Yeah,
Everybody's surprised. But yeah, so I looked at that and I said, okay, the next thing is all those other elements they'd like you to take out of your house. But I also read that they like to combine those type of things with putting solar panels up on the roof and then battery backups,
yeah.
because of the fact that what you were talking about earlier, the need for another system or another backup in case the power goes down.
Yeah, and California's got problems with the forest fires that every time they have one of those, they shut down the power, or they're threatening a forest fire, they shut down the power, so they have the equivalent to our winter storms.
Yeah, brownouts and blackouts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, do you think the grid's capable of actually handling all this
No,
electrification?
I mean, we went through this with the electric cars.
Yeah.
And you start doing this thing in a gross way, the grid is not designed for it, and we're running into conflicts everywhere. The Greens want to eliminate any what they call dirty fuel, which means it produces carbon dioxide. And as a result, they have stopped bringing in another gas line in several locations. And this past winter, National Grid was saying that we may have a problem this year if it gets very, very cold, in that we don't have enough gas to keep all the boilers running or all the turbines running to make electricity. So we're putting a crimp on the system on the gas end, and there's no alternative to it. We're supposed to bring in the power from Quebec, and that got stymied because they don't want to have these towers going through their beautiful forest up in Maine. And I mean, you can't have it both ways. It just doesn't work. And the other thing that really gets to me is that in one of the brochures that I got, it says, and you're going to save money. So after I've done some arithmetic, I asked this guy, how do I save money? Well, you don't get inflicted with this carbon tax that the governor and the state legislature just approved to artificially raise the cost of natural gas so that it becomes competitive with electricity.
Oh,
Just what we. So you're talking about people who are not terribly well off,
I don't know.
and they're already struggling with their heating and electric bills, and now to make the incentive better to convert to electricity, we artificially jack up the price of the gas and the oil with a carbon tax.
Yeah, because of the nature of all the source of it today, the way they want to go with just all renewables and so forth.
Yeah.
By themselves, they're not cost effective,
No,
nor are they dependable.
no.
And that's part of the problem.
That is the problem. It's a scheme that they've concocted that really wasn't thought out well enough to look at what do you have to do for the infrastructure to support this idea. And it reminds me, way back when, there were three kinds of cars. Gas, steam, and electric.
I don't remember those.
Yes.
Okay.
And steam cars had a problem that not only did you have to spend some time warming it up before you could go anywhere, but you would periodically run out of water because it was an open cycle steam engine.
Yeah.
And way back when, they used to have watering troughs in every town for the horses. So if you had a low water tank, you just pull up next to the watering trough, fill up your water tank, and go. Well, cars got to be so popular, people didn't have horses anymore. The water tanks disappeared. And Stanley didn't come up with a closed-loop system quick enough. So that led to the demise of steam cars. But it's the same kind of thing that you make up a system that works in a very narrow little box, and you try to say, we're going to use this everywhere. And you don't realize what the hell you're missing.
I heard a gentleman make a comparison. He said the green initiative, or the green dream as he liked to refer to it, is like selling your house because you're going to build one, but you haven't started building it.
Yeah, yeah. And the other one I like is a meme going around on the web with AOC with screaming about her, the world is coming to an end in 12 years. And right next to it is Al Gore. Yeah, that's what I've been saying for 50 years.
Yeah.
It's just premature.
One of the things I did find is that Maine has this enormous program that they put in place to actually by 2025 they wanted 100,000 heat pumps installed in homes. And they started that program back in 2019. Up to this point, they only got 28,000 that they have. That's it.
It's a forced system. It is like the governor's plan. You got 461 out of 100,000 last year to convert.
And the point they were making is it was just simply too costly for anybody to retrofit a home.
It's too costly, and on top of it, they're really not that a well-preserved, developed system. Got one YouTube link. They're talking about the pros and cons. It says, number one, they're foreign made, and they're not terribly reliable. And in fact, the guy that was selling me his system says he wants me to spend $180 a year as a maintenance fee up front. And because they're foreign made, most of them, it goes down. You don't have the parts in the truck. You got to order the parts from Japan or Germany or someplace else where they're making them. So it's an issue problem with this. How do you get replacement parts?
Yeah, and if they're bought from offshore to China, then obviously you have logistics issues.
Yeah, it's
right? Supply chain backups and everything.
Yeah, so they're into those kind of problems. So cosmetically, they're not very attractive. They are relatively easy to retrofit, but it looks ugly, and it's very expensive.
Well, George, I think you've done a yeoman job here explaining the program, what's out there.
You're not going to buy one?
No, I'm not. Absolutely not going to buy one. But I'd like to close in thanking you for allowing me to be your host. I want to thank you for being the guest. And if anybody has any questions about what we've been talking about today, please just drop a line to George. And George, I'm sure will be able to take care of you.